My name is Lindsay Walker, and at 31 years old, I never expected my own mother to ban me from our family Christmas party. I built my finance career in private away from my family, who always favored my younger brother, Kevin. When Mom called to uninvite me, saying my presence might overshadow Kevin and his new successful girlfriend, something inside me finally broke. I had no idea that 2 months later, Kevin would walk into my office for a job interview completely unaware that I was the CEO. If you are enjoying this already, tell me in the comments what country you're watching from. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more real-life shocking family stories. Growing up in suburban Cleveland, Ohio, our family seemed picture perfect from the outside. Our house, flat roof, with a clean lines and warm cedar, was designed by my father, who never missed a chance to tell guests about the way morning light traveled across the open-plan living room. My mother filled the space with her voice, measured, polished, a lawyer who could take the softest cruelty and wrap it in silk so it sounded like concern. She loved rules, and more than that, she loved being the one to decide which rules mattered. There were framed blueprints in the hallway and framed diplomas over the mantel. Family photos existed, but they were careful and staged. My mother's hand on my father's arm, Kevin in front, me off to the side because someone had to hold the dog. That was the joke. Lindsay's tall. She'll anchor the composition, and everyone laughed while I kept my smile right where they'd placed me. Kevin arrived 2 years after me. I remember the day they brought him home in a puffed blue blanket. My father filmed every yawn and hiccup like it was a national broadcast. When Kevin got his first C, my mother drove him for ice cream and patted his knee in the car, telling him he'd tried hard and that trying was what mattered. When his team lost by 12 runs in Little League, my parents stood screaming from the stands as if their applause could rewrite the score. "We're proud of you, champ," my father said, lifting Kevin onto his shoulders in the parking lot. It looked, from behind, like a big victory. I learned early that volume counted. Noise drew attention, attention drew softness, and softness drew gifts. I liked the debate team, chess club, the A on a paper coming back with a crisp fold. But at home, quiet victories didn't carry. I'd come through the door with a medal around my neck and my mother would say, "Well done." We expected nothing less, then pivot to Kevin's science fair volcano that never erupted because he poured the vinegar first. He got a chocolate shake for the effort, while I got to wash the blender. Our dinners had seating charts without the cards. My father's spot at the head, my mother to his right, Kevin to his left so they could lean in and plan his next comeback. I sat opposite the window and learned to watch my reflection chew. Sometimes my father asked me about school, and I'd start to tell him how I'd won a regional debate round with a counterplan that turned the room. He nodded, fork moving, and said, "Good. Lindsay thrives when expectations are clear." Then he asked Kevin if Saturday's coach had been too hard on him and whether new cleats might make the difference. Once, in 10th grade, I qualified for a statewide economics competition held in Columbus. The school printed a banner with our names. Mr. Levine, my coach, told me I had a shot at first. On the morning of the final round, my mother stood in the kitchen with her travel mug and said she couldn't drive down because Kevin had a dentist appointment, wisdom teeth, poor thing. "It's routine, but he's nervous," she said, lowering her voice the way she did with clients. "You understand." I took the school bus with the others and 1 second. That night Kevin ate mashed potatoes on the couch with a blanket around his shoulders, and my father put the silver medal on the coffee table like a coaster. Praise, when it came, was always calibrated, solid, Lindsay, as expected, reliable. My mother liked the word reliable. It meant I cost them no energy. Kevin was special, sensitive, full of potential. My father used the word potential like a promise pressed into Kevin's palm. When Kevin forgot his homework, my mother wrote notes to his teacher about stress at home. And when I forgot mine once in 7th grade, she said, "Set an alarm. You're old enough to manage yourself." After school, I worked at the library shelving returns while Kevin shot hoops in the driveway. Neighbors would pass and say, "That boy's got heart," and my father would beam like he'd poured it there himself. I'd come inside and set the table, and when I asked my mother if she wanted help drafting her closing arguments for a pro bono case, she said, "No need. Go review your notes. Excellence doesn't maintain itself." It sounded like encouragement until I learned it was a boundary. "We don't interfere with one another's domains," she often said. But we lived entirely in Kevin's. Senior year, when I captained the debate club and won 2 academic decathlons, our principal wrote my parents a letter about my leadership. My mother placed it on the counter with the grocery coupons. When I graduated valedictorian, my father adjusted the focus on his camera to film Kevin shouting my name. After the ceremony, my parents handed me a small box with a thin watch inside. The metal was too bright and the band pinched my wrist. "Classic," my mother said. "Practical," my father added. We took a photo, me with the valedictorian sash, the watch catching the sun. A week later, Kevin turned 16 and my parents surprised him with a used Jeep in the driveway, red bow and all. "For growing up so wonderfully," my mother said, tearing up as if he'd survived a storm rather than coasted on favorable weather. He ground the gears on the test drive while I stood on the sidewalk with my cheap watch ticking, learning the early lesson that some gifts are just reminders dressed as kindness. I enrolled at the University of Michigan with more determination than certainty. The day I received my acceptance letter, my parents looked at me with polite smiles, the kind reserved for a neighbor's child who had achieved something mildly interesting. My mother's words were clipped, "We're saving for Kevin, you'll manage on your own." And with that, my path was sealed. No safety net, no tuition fund, no applause. Just the expectation that I would figure it out. The first semester nearly broke me. Tuition alone was a mountain, and the dorm cafeteria seemed like an expensive luxury. While other students decorated their rooms with fairy lights and posters, I worked late shifts at the campus computer club, teaching freshmen how to set up email accounts, troubleshoot printers, or recover lost essays. The job wasn't glamorous, but it kept me afloat. At night, I tutored high school kids in math and economics. I remember walking across Ann Arbor's snowy streets at 11 at night, exhausted, my backpack heavier with every step. But there was no choice. If I didn't make it work, no one else would. Weekends became my study marathons. I didn't go to football games or frat parties. My entertainment was the library's silence, the way fluorescent lights buzzed above my head while I crammed definitions and models into my brain. Every paycheck went straight into tuition, rent, and textbooks. Sometimes, I'd treat myself to a $5 pizza, sitting cross-legged on the dorm floor with the box open like it was a banquet. My friends joked about college poverty, but for me, it wasn't a phase, it was survival. Calls home were short and pointed. My mother would ask if I had spoken to Kevin lately. My father would mention Kevin's new adventures, his high school team, his new car, his latest effort. Not once did they ask if I had eaten properly or how many hours I was working. When I brought up the struggle, my mother's voice carried its usual polished edge. "You're resourceful, Lindsay. You'll manage." And I did. But resourcefulness came with a cost: sleepless nights, empty bank accounts, and a constant knot in my stomach that only relaxed when I saw my grades. Despite everything, I excelled. I had to. Every lecture I attended, every paper I wrote, every problem I solved was my way of proving that I could carry myself without their help. I took pride in being the student professors relied on to spark discussions, the one who could untangle a messy economic model on the board. By junior year, I was working part-time in a consulting firm in Ann Arbor, helping small businesses analyze budgets. It wasn't glamorous, but it taught me how money moved in the real world and how badly I wanted to be part of shaping that. There were nights I cried quietly in the dorm bathroom, not from failure, but from the weight of holding everything alone. My roommates slept soundly while I calculated whether I could afford both groceries and the next semester's books. I found creative solutions. I bought used textbooks online, shared study materials with classmates, and sometimes skipped meals so I wouldn't skip tuition. Kevin, meanwhile, flourished under the spotlight of my parents' attention. They visited him during his freshman year of college at Ohio State, bringing care packages and taking photos for Facebook. They posted about his journey, as if he were climbing Everest. No one ever visited me in Ann Arbor. No one saw the dark circles under my eyes after a week of midterms and double shifts. The contrast stung most during milestones. When I presented my senior thesis, a detailed analysis of regional economic development, it was a packed room, but my seat for family remained empty. I had told them weeks in advance. My father later said, "Oh, Kevin had a game that weekend. We couldn't be in two places at once." The words replayed in my head as I stood in front of professors who clapped politely. It was enough to make me wonder whether excellence, without witnesses, even mattered. But I refused to falter. For years of sacrifice culminated in something I couldn't have imagined during those bleak nights. I graduated with honors in economics, top of my class, with professors already recommending me for graduate programs and firms offering interviews. I had done it entirely on my own. The day of graduation, while my classmates' families gathered with balloons and flowers, I stood in my cap and gown holding a diploma that weighed more than paper. I searched the crowd out of habit, though I already knew. No parents, no Kevin, no applause with my name on it. Just silence. I asked a friend to take a picture of me in front of the university banner, smiling with all the strength I could muster. Later that evening, while I scrolled through social media, I saw the post my parents had uploaded that very same day. A photo of themselves in their backyard, barbecue smoke curling behind them, Kevin laughing with a burger in hand. The caption read, "Nothing better than family time on a sunny afternoon." I stared at the screen, my cap and gown still on the chair beside me, and felt the sting of reality. My greatest triumph didn't even exist in their world. They had celebrated Kevin's casual weekend while I stood alone in a sea of families, holding the proof of my independence. And yet, deep inside, a fire lit. If they could erase me so easily from their narrative, then I would write my own. After graduation, I packed my few belongings into a second-hand car with a dented bumper and drove to Chicago. The city felt enormous, buzzing with ambition and opportunity, and I was determined to carve a place for myself. I started as an analyst at a mid-sized consulting firm, one of dozens of eager 20-somethings crammed into cubicles, all hoping to prove ourselves indispensable. From the beginning, I made my own choice. While my peers signed out at 5:30, I stayed until midnight. I volunteered for the ugliest projects, the ones no one wanted because they were messy, full of failing budgets and disorganized data. I took them apart piece by piece, running analysis, identifying patterns, building models until something clicked. Clients who had arrived angry and skeptical left the table nodding because I could explain their problems in a way they not only understood but could fix. The turning point came in my third year. A major client, a manufacturing company on the brink of collapse, landed in our laps. Most thought it was hopeless, just another file destined for bankruptcy court. I stayed up 3 nights straight, mapping out a strategy that not only saved them but restructured their entire supply chain. The plan brought them back to profitability and secured our firm a $1 million contract extension. When the senior partners called me into the boardroom to thank me, I was still in yesterday's clothes with coffee stains on my blouse. I didn't care. I had earned my seat at the table. Promotions followed quickly after that. At 26, I was appointed head of my department, managing people who were older and often skeptical of me. But results spoke louder than age. I built a reputation as the person who could handle impossible clients and turn projects around. My name started circulating beyond the firm. Recruiters called, companies asked for me by name, and competitors tried to poach me. Instead, I doubled down, pouring myself into work until I wasn't just part of the company's success, I was shaping it. At 29, I made partner. The day it was announced, I sat in the corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, my reflection faint against the glass. I had arrived at a place most people my age only dreamed about. To celebrate, I signed the papers on a loft by the lake, spacious, minimalist, with exposed brick walls and sunlight that spilled across polished wood floors. It felt like proof that every sleepless night, every unpaid bill from my university days, had been worth it. But success, I quickly realized, was not enough to change my family's script. I would call home to share the news of my latest promotion, or tell them about the clients I was working with, expecting at least a flicker of pride. Instead, the conversation always turned. My mother, her voice polished and practiced as if she were still in a courtroom, would say, "Lindsay, Kevin is thinking of starting a business. You'll help him, right?" Every time, the words hit like a pin bursting a balloon. I had built myself into something beyond what anyone had expected, but in their eyes, my achievements were simply resources for Kevin's next attempt at potential. At first, I laughed it off. I told them gently that I was busy, that Kevin should explore options himself. But the requests became more persistent. "Kevin is thinking of a food truck business. Maybe you can draft a business plan. Kevin wants to invest in crypto. Can you give him seed money? Kevin is talking about opening a gym. Perhaps you can mentor him." Each time, I felt the old familiar sting. No matter how high I climbed, I was still the background character in their story. Sometimes I would hang up the phone and sit in the silence of my loft, staring at the city lights outside my window. I had built a life most people envied, yet inside me there was a small, gnawing ache. Because what good was success if the people who should have known me best refused to see me at all? So I tried, briefly, to bridge the gap. I invited them to visit Chicago, offered to show them the city, my office, my home. They always had excuses. Kevin had plans. Kevin was tired. Kevin needed support. My parents never set foot in my loft. They never walked through the office where their daughter's name was etched on the glass door of the partner's suite. Their absence spoke louder than any words could have. That December, I told myself things would be different. It had been too long since I'd gone home for Christmas, too many years of excuses and distance. Despite the sting of their constant comparisons, I wanted to believe my success had finally earned me a place at the table. So I bought the tickets, Chicago to Cleveland, nonstop, window seat. I even chose a nice bottle of wine from a boutique shop near my loft, imagining myself handing it to my father with a smile, as though we could pretend to be a normal family for one night. The week before Christmas, I called my mother to confirm my arrival. She answered briskly, her voice full of background noise, pots clanging, Kevin talking loudly, a household in motion. I could hear the faint hum of laughter in the distance. For a moment, I thought maybe she would sound glad to hear from me. Instead, her words came sharp and deliberate, slicing through the static. "This year Kevin is bringing Susan. She is a senior manager at the bank, very successful. We want all the attention to be on them. You understand, your energy sometimes overshadows everything." I froze in my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, unable to breathe. The world seemed to tilt, the lights of the city outside my window blurring into streaks. Overshadows. That was the word she had chosen, as if the very act of me showing up would dim Kevin's glory. "Mom," I whispered, my throat dry, "I already bought the tickets." She sighed. The kind of sigh that lawyers use in court when the outcome is already determined. "Refund them, Lindsay. It's just 1 year. Kevin's bringing someone important. We don't want her to feel uncomfortable." Uncomfortable. I wanted to laugh, but the sound caught in my chest like ice splintering. What she meant was that my presence, the daughter they had trained to be invisible, might expose the truth. That Susan, the new shining star, would have to compete with me, and they couldn't allow that. When the call ended, I sat on the edge of my sofa staring at the silent phone in my hand. Outside, snow fell softly across the lake, blanketing the streets in white. Inside, I felt nothing but a hollow cold, as though someone had reached into my chest and pulled out the last ember of hope. I had flown halfway across the country to save failing companies, to negotiate contracts worth millions. But in my parents' house, I was still the obstacle, the problem, the one who had to step aside so Kevin could shine. The days leading up to Christmas were brutal. My colleagues packed up early, talking about family dinners, about going home to warm kitchens and laughter. I smiled when they spoke, but inside I felt gutted. I had tickets to Cleveland sitting useless on my counter and nowhere to go. On Christmas Eve, I walked the city streets alone. Chicago glittered with holiday lights, the air filled with the smell of roasted chestnuts and the sound of carolers. Couples strolled hand in hand, children pointed at decorated windows. I wandered past them like a ghost, clutching my coat tight against the cold. I ended up at the lakefront, the water dark and restless, the wind cutting into my skin. For the first time in years, I let myself cry, Not the silent, controlled tears I shed in the privacy of my loft, but raw sobs that echoed into the night. It wasn't just about missing Christmas dinner. It was about the realization that I had never truly been wanted there. That every achievement, every sacrifice, every victory of mine had been invisible, dismissed, or worse, resented. When I finally returned to my loft, cheeks frozen, eyes swollen, I sat down with a cup of tea that had long gone cold and faced the truth. I was still a hindrance to them. Not a daughter, not a person to be celebrated, but a shadow to be managed. I didn't call again. I didn't fight for a seat at their table. For the first time in my life, I let go of the illusion that their approval was something I needed. But the wound cut deep, and the scar would stay with me long after the snow melted. 2 months after that Christmas phone call, I was back in my element, the 12th floor conference room, glass on 3 sides, Lake Michigan. The table was set with binders and carafes of coffee, our logo floating on the wall monitor. We were negotiating a restructuring and growth strategy for a regional client, and the bank had sent a new senior manager to vet our plan and discuss financing terms. I noticed her before I knew who she was. She walked in with the banker's gait, heels precise, coat folded over her arm with military neatness, a leather portfolio tucked tight to her side. Polished, composed, not trying too hard because she didn't have to. Her hair was the color magazines call chestnut, her lipstick the exact red that photographs well under fluorescence. She smiled easily at my team, that corporate smile that promises cooperation while counting risks. "Good morning," she said, sliding into a chair across from me as our assistant set out name tents. "I'm Susan Hart, Senior Manager in Corporate Lending." My body reacted before my mind did, a small flicker of recognition without a name. Hart. Bank. Susan. The syllables lined up like numbers falling into place, and my chest gave that unpleasant pinch memory reserves for landmines. Kevin's Susan. She didn't recognize me. Why would she? Our lives had only overlapped in the negative space, my absence from Christmas dinner clearing a seat at my parents' table for her. She spread out her papers, efficient, eyes scanning our executive summary with the rhythm of someone accustomed to sorting signal from noise. We started the meeting. I walked through the baseline assumptions for the client's turnaround, the phased reduction in fixed costs, the new vendor terms I'd secured with penalties for late shipments and discounts for volume. I showed the sensitivity tables for commodity fluctuations, pointed to the cash conversion cycle changes that would free up working capital. She nodded in the right places, interjecting with precise questions that proved she'd read the packet on the way over and again in the lobby. "Walk me through your Q3 covenants," she said, pen poised. "You're projecting a leverage ratio of 3.5x post-close. Your interest coverage climbs above 4.0x by year 2, assuming you hit the margin expansion you've modeled. What's the contingency if the price index doesn't normalize?" I liked her question because it was the one that mattered. We talked contingencies. We talked downside protection, stress tests, the ugly case you don't write in glossy fonts. She looked at me, not through me, and for 40 minutes she was just a banker, and I was just a partner, and we were 2 professionals trying to keep a company from falling through the floor. When the moment came to exchange business cards, I slid mine across. She glanced down, and for the first time her composure wavered. The tiny muscles near her mouth tightened, barely noticeable unless you watch for that kind of thing, which I do. "Walker," she said, slowly. Then lighter, as if testing the sound. "Any relation to?" "My brother," I said, before she finished. "Kevin." A soft flush climbed her neck. She arranged her features into a polite smile that didn't quite land. "Oh," she said, and then nothing, because there was nothing safe to say. We moved on. She asked about collateral and reserves. I pointed to the appendices. My team filled in operational details. She checked the boxes that needed checking. When we broke for coffee, she lingered by the window, holding a paper cup she didn't drink from, staring at the lake like it might give her the words. "Ms. Walker," she said finally, voice lower, professional veneer softened by something human. "Your office. Is it? Are you in the partner suite?" I could have lied. I could have let her sit longer in the space Kevin's stories had built for me. Instead, I nodded toward the glass door with my name on it. She followed my gaze, reading the etched letters the way you read a confession. We went back to work. The meeting concluded with a handshake and a draft term sheet. In the elevator lobby, while my team ducked into offices to debrief, she touched my sleeve. Do you have a minute? I led her into the small lounge just past reception, the quiet place with 2 low chairs and a view of the Navy Pier Ferris while turning slow and patient. She stood for a moment, then sat, portfolio balanced on her knees like a shield she'd forgotten how to hold. I need to say something, she began, eyes on the Ferris wheel rather than me. This is mortifying. When Kevin told me about you, he said you were jealous of him, unemployed, and still living in a rented apartment. She winced, the kind of wince that comes when you hear your own gullibility out loud. But then I saw your partner's office and realized he was lying. I watched Susan's shoulders fall a fraction, the way they do when a person lowers something heavy they didn't realize they were carrying. She looked, in that moment, less like a polished senior manager and more like a woman caught between competing scripts, the one her boyfriend had handed her and the one she had just read on glass. I'm sorry, she said, turning toward me fully now. I should have questioned it. I should have noticed when he dodged specifics. I'm good at reading clients, but in my personal life, she stopped, breathed, regrouped. That's not your problem. I just wanted you to know I see it. I see you. There's a version of me that might have snapped, demanded reasons, held her accountable for believing the worst about a stranger. But another version, the one that survived years of being the shadow, chose something else. Thank you, I said. My voice sounded steady, which felt like a small miracle. I appreciate you saying that. She nodded quickly, relief flickering, and then working to assemble the rest of what she had come to say. He talked about you like a problem to manage, she admitted. I thought it was just sibling stuff. Families exaggerate. But the way he went at it, she looked down at her hands, composed them on the portfolio. I should go. I'm not sure what to do with this in my personal life, but professionally, your plan is strong. I'm recommending we proceed. Work. The safe harbor. We stood. She offered her hand and I took it, the professional mask slipping back into place on both sides, not dishonest, exactly, just the version that lets the world keep moving without stopping. At the door, she paused. For what it's worth, she said, softer, I liked you before I knew your last name. A small wry smile. I just like you more now. After she left, I stayed in the lounge a few minutes longer, hands braced on the cool window ledge, breathing in the sterile scent of coffee and copier paper. I thought about the way lies travel frictionless when they flatter the listener's view of themselves. Back at my desk, my assistant had left a neat stack of messages. Clients to call, a draft to review, a reminder that the board packet was due Friday. Ordinary life resumed its rhythm, the one I had built without applause. In my inbox, a calendar invite appeared from the bank. Follow-up discussion, subject line crisp and neutral. From Susan, looking forward to next steps with a winking emoji. For the rest of the day, I worked. Numbers are polite that way. They ask for your attention, and if you give it, they give you an answer. A week after the meeting with Susan, my phone lit up with Kevin's name at 6:42 a.m., the hour people reserve for emergencies and bad news. I stared at it, let it ring once, twice, told myself to send it to voicemail. I answered anyway. He didn't say hello. He exhaled a ragged breath. She's gone, he said. Susan. She left. I pressed the phone to my ear and looked out at the pale band of winter light crawling over Lake Michigan. I'm sorry, I said, because that was the polite thing, the decent thing, even though the word felt like a pebble tossed at a locked door. She said she needed space, he went on, voice wobbling between anger and self-pity. She said there were trust issues. Can you believe that? After everything I've done for her. He paused, waiting for me to fill the gap with sympathy. When I didn't, he pushed on. Did you talk to her? Did you say something? I closed my eyes. Kevin, I met her at work. We discussed a deal. That's it. He sniffed. Right. Silence swelled, brittle and familiar. Whatever. I thought family should know. Mom and Dad are coming to Chicago. We need to talk. The line went dead. By noon, my mother's texts arrived like filings in a case, landing at 4:15. Kevin is fragile. Don't make this about you. Then my father, we'll meet at your place. It's urgent. They didn't ask. They stated. I could have said no. I could have refused the performance none of us needed. Instead, I cooked pasta and left the sauce warming on the stove because anger doesn't erase old habits. They arrived together, coats flapping, outrage walking in ahead of them. My mother bypassed hello and went straight to the point, voice pitched to carry across a courtroom. You ruined his relationship, she said, stepping into my living room as if it were a witness stand. You just couldn't stand that he was finally happy. You have a career, Lindsay. Why take away his last thing? My father nodded, jaw tight. You had no right to meddle, he added. Susan was good for him. I leaned against the kitchen island and watched steam curl from the pot, the air scented with tomatoes and basil. I didn't meddle, I said. We had a meeting. She realized he'd lied to her. That's between them. My mother's eyes flashed. Everyone embellishes, she snapped. You don't need to go out of your way to humiliate him. You overshadow everything. There it was again, the word that made me a problem to be managed. Kevin showed up 10 minutes later, sunglasses on indoors, the picture of theatrical heartbreak. He slumped into a chair and spread his hands. I hope you're happy, he said, not looking at me. She said she saw your office. Partner. She said I should have told her. A bitter laugh. Like it matters. It does matter, I said quietly. It matters that you lied. Don't take that tone, my mother cut in. He's hurting. I'm hurting. Kevin echoed, as if reading from a script. Yes, I have real problems now. The apartment needs renovating before I can sublet it. I've got some debts. The timing is terrible. He finally looked at me, eyes sharp under the performance. You have to help me. My father folded his arms like a verdict. We need to get this done quickly, he said. Contractors are lined up. We'll reimburse you when we can. How much? I asked, keeping my voice even. My mother didn't blink. 50 would be a start. 50 what? I said, though I already knew. 1,000, Kevin said, and took off his sunglasses like he was unveiling a wound. I'll pay you back in a year. 2, max. Renovations, my father added. And other things. He's in debt. You know how these things snowball. I thought of the meals I'd skipped in college and the late nights I'd stayed to keep a company from collapsing. I thought of the Christmas phone call that had slammed a door in my face. All of it arranged itself into something solid inside me, a spine of decisions I had made to survive. No, I said. And this word didn't need volume. My mother blinked. Excuse me? No, I repeated. I'm not funding renovations. I'm not covering his debts. I won't be your emergency bank. After everything we've done for you, my father began, and I laughed, a short, astonished sound. Everything you've done for me? I asked. You saved for Kevin and told me I'd manage. You skipped my graduation for a barbecue. You uninvited me from Christmas so Susan wouldn't feel uncomfortable. You call when you need cash, not when you want to know me. My mother's mouth thinned to a line. Don't be dramatic. This isn't drama, I said. This is accounting. Inputs and outputs. I'm done investing in a story where I only exist to fix Kevin's mistakes. Kevin threw up his hands. So you're punishing me because you're jealous, he said, voice rising. This is sick. I stepped closer and kept my tone level. I'm not jealous of you, Kevin. I'm tired. I'm tired of being useful instead of loved. My father paced once, twice, the way he did when something refused to match his blueprint. Think about appearances, he said. Loans leave a paper trail. If people see you won't help family. I don't build my life around appearances, I said. That's your language, not mine. Silence arranged itself around us. The sauce bubbled softly. Snow ticked at the window. My mother chose a new angle, voice softening into the version of concern she wore for juries. Sweetheart, we're not asking you to give it away. We'll pay you back. But Kevin can't start over without a cushion. Be reasonable. Reasonable? I repeated. Like selling me a cheap watch while buying him a Jeep. Reasonable like asking me to skip Christmas because my energy overshadows. Reasonable like telling his girlfriend I'm unemployed. I looked at Kevin. You said that, didn't you? He flinched, then smirked. So what if I did? You weren't there. I was always there, I said. You just never looked. My mother reached for my arm, and I stepped back. Don't do this, she said. Don't make us beg. You don't need to beg, I said. You need to plan. You need to take responsibility. And I nodded at Kevin, needs to decide whether he wants a life or a narrative. Kevin stood, chair legs scraping the floor. You're heartless, he said. You think money makes you strong. But it doesn't. No, I replied, and surprised myself with how gentle it sounded. Boundaries do. My father's face closed. My mother gathered her coat in sharp, efficient movements, converting emotion into action as always. Kevin shoved his sunglasses back on. They headed for the door in a cluster of wounded pride and choreographed outrage. I'll wire you the details, my mother said over her shoulder. One last try at the old rhythm. Don't, I said. The door shut. The loft was suddenly too quiet, the way a house sounds after guests leave, the furniture sighing, the air settling. I turned off the stove and covered the pot. In the glass, I caught my reflection, tired, yes, but upright, an outline with its own light. My phone buzzed with a new message from Kevin, a string of accusations, then a demand, then a threat not to speak to me again. I deleted it. I made a plate of pasta I couldn't taste and sat at my table, listening to the city hum through the walls, feeling the sting and the strange relief of an old pattern breaking. I washed my plate. I put the leftovers in the fridge. I returned to my desk and opened my laptop to the term sheet Susan had sent. I didn't sleep much after they left. I made coffee at 2 a.m., watched the city blink and dim, and tried to name the feeling that replaced panic once it ran out of fuel. Clarity, maybe? By noon the next day, the text started again, this time more measured, less accusatory, as if an invisible PR team had rewritten the family script overnight. My mother sent paragraphs about miscommunications and fresh starts. My father attached a spreadsheet with contractor estimates and a friendly subject line, moving forward. Kevin sent a single word, please. I stared at the screen until the dots in their messages stopped pulsing. A familiar loop began to spool up in my head. Then something steadier cut through it. If I kept solving the wrong problems, I'd keep getting the same life. So I wrote back, money? Fine. But only if you prove you're capable of doing something for me at least once in your life, and not just for Kevin. I didn't hit send right away. The sentence felt like a wire stretched between us. Once I tightened it, there would be no friendly way to step over. I walked the perimeter of the loft, palms warm, mouth dry, and when the heat passed, I added the rest. I'm overseeing a charity project, mentoring high school girls from disadvantaged families who want to study. You want my support? Then give 3 months of your time to this project. Not money. Your time. Weekly commitments. Reliable attendance. If you succeed, I will help financially. If you don't come back with any more demands. Then I pressed send and turned my phone face down on the table like it might bite. The project wasn't theoretical. 2 years earlier, I'd convinced the partners to fund an internal initiative, part corporate responsibility, part community pipeline. We paired girls from under-resourced schools with mentors in law, finance, architecture, and tech. We helped with essays, FAFSA, interview prep. We stocked a room with donated laptops and quiet tables so they could study without chaos. My mother, a lawyer with a gift for precision and performance. My father, an architect who could speak in lines and light. Kevin, a man with 1,000 almosts who knew how to talk to people when he cared to. For once, I would assign them a place where effort mattered and excuses didn't pay out. The phone lit up almost immediately. From Mom, volunteering is wonderful, but this feels punitive. What exactly would you expect from us? From Dad, proud of the work you're doing. What about logistics? From Kevin, what does weekly mean? I'm between things right now. Between things. It would have been funny if it hadn't been so predictable. I drafted a syllabus the way I would for a client. Roles, timelines, deliverables. No wiggle room disguised as kindness. For my mother, I scheduled legal literacy clinics, understanding scholarship contracts, tenant rights, how to read a document without being intimidated by the letterhead. I told her she'd lead a workshop on speaking up with authority, an arena where her training read like a crown. For my father, I requested a design studio, show the girls how to draw a floor plan, how to imagine space, and then translate it into something real. He'd help them draft a portfolio piece for applications to architecture or engineering programs. For Kevin, I wrote event logistics, outreach calls, resume review tables, mock interview days. You're on operations. You will be accountable for headcount and setup. People will rely on you. I attached a calendar, a checklist, a rule, 2 absences max, 36 hours minimum, weekly progress notes. Then I hit send again. My mother called within minutes, her voice modulated into the tone she used in court when she wanted a witness to like her. Lindsay, darling, she said. Of course, we want to support your philanthropic efforts. But 3 months is substantial. Couldn't we donate professional services instead? Pro bono hours for the foundation? That might be more efficient. It's specifically not about money or quick signatures, I said. It's about showing up. The girls don't need another ghost on letterhead. They need adults who make time for them. But I have a very heavy caseload, my mom interrupted. So did I for a decade, I said. You've both told me my success means I should help the family. I'm giving you a way to show you understand what help means. Silence hummed, and I pictured her tapping a pen against a legal pad, calculating the optics. I'll consider it, she said finally. Send me the dates. My father emailed later that afternoon with measured enthusiasm. We can do a charrette. Bring tracing paper. Teach basic drafting. Maybe a small model? Then, almost as an afterthought, proud of you, kiddo. Kevin ignored the plan. He texted a meme and a question about whether snacks would be provided. Then, 3 months is aggressive. What if I coordinate remotely? You'll be in the room, I replied. People are counting on you to set up chairs, greet students, check them in, follow up. You said you wanted to start fresh. Start here. He sent a thumbs up emoji as if virtual approval could carry physical weight. The first Wednesday, I arrived early. The foundation's classroom sat on the second floor of a community center that smelled faintly of floor wax and cafeteria pizza. We'd set up long tables, bowl of fruit, granola bars, a pitcher of water with lemon slices, because dignity begins in the details. The whiteboard held the week's agenda in block letters. At 5:50 p.m., girls started drifting in, backpacks heavy, voices loud in that way relief makes you loud, once you know you're somewhere safe. At 6:02, my mother walked in wearing a navy suit that said she'd come from court and would return to the battlefield if provoked. She scanned the room like a judge entering a chamber, then softened at the sight of the girls. I introduced her simply. This is Diane. She's here to teach us how to read what people hope you won't understand. She blinked, a small flicker, then smiled the real smile, the one that made juries lean forward. Let's start with a contract, she said, pulling a packet from her briefcase. Not because you'll sign one today, but because power hides in documents. And she was really good. She broke clauses into language you could hold. She handed the shyest girl a highlighter and asked her to mark phrases that felt like a trap. She didn't pander. She listened. When a student asked if a landlord could keep a deposit for cleaning, Mom didn't scold the mess. She wrote the statute on the board. She stayed 15 minutes past the end time answering questions, and when she slipped out, she touched my arm the way a runner tags a teammate at a relay. Send me the reading for next week, she said. Her eyes were bright with something I recognized and hadn't seen directed at me in years, respect. My father arrived on Saturday in jeans and a sweater I remembered from old photos, a pencil tucked behind his ear like a talisman. He spread tracing paper and a set of soft lead pencils across the tables with a care that felt ceremonial. Architecture is planning for a future you can stand inside, he told the girls. You don't need permission to draw a room. You need attention. He showed them how to measure with their palms when a ruler was missing, how to shade a shadow so a flat line suggested dimension. He crouched to eye level and looked at their work like something that mattered. Kevin was late. He walked in with coffee and the faint smell of last night, shirt untucked, expression a performance of busy. I handed him the sign-in sheet, the name tags, the stack of handouts. Chairs need 3 to a table, I said. Put granola bars on every other seat. Make sure the water stays full. He rolled his eyes and did it. But I watched him. Every place he straightened became a place a girl chose to sit. Every name he wrote correctly on a tag made that girl feel expected, not tolerated. He didn't notice the effect. He only noticed that he was bored. When a girl asked him how to list volunteer work on a resume, he shrugged. Just put it under other. I stepped in. Or under leadership, I said, writing it on the board. He blinked like a flash had gone off and then looked away. But then Kevin missed a Wednesday and texted, car trouble. He missed a Saturday and sent, stomach thing. I didn't respond. At the third session, I handed him the run of show and told him to read the closing notes at 7:55. He fumbled the page, read too fast, skipped the line about next week's guest and the permission slips. The girls still clapped for him because the girls were kind. Inside this structure I'd built, my family was no longer abstract. They were measured by whether chairs were set up, whether a shy girl learned to hold a pen like a gavel instead of a weapon turning on herself, whether water pitchers got refilled without being asked. At home, the text continued. Kevin sent screenshots of overdue notices and circled sums like they were meteorological data beyond human control. My mother sent me a calendar invite titled Volunteer Hours, Diane, and, separately, a forwarded email from a judge praising her courtroom conduct that day, as if to remind me she could be impressive elsewhere. My father emailed floor plan templates and asked if we could purchase more rulers, drafting tape, needed erasers. I ordered them that afternoon. This test wasn't about humiliating them. It was about seeing whether they could learn the muscle memory of showing up for someone who wasn't Kevin, who wasn't easy to love, because loving her didn't earn them applause at home. Of course, I didn't promise myself a result. At the end of week 4, Kevin asked me in the parking lot if this counted as a lot. He squinted at the streetlight like answers lived up there. It counts as beginning, I said. For money later, he clarified. For trust later, I said. Money is downstream. He scoffed, but showed up 2 days later with a box of name tags without my reminding him. He set up chairs before I arrived. He still forgot the water. My mother stopped suggesting pro bono hours and started asking the girls for their college lists. She practiced mock cross-examinations with them in the hallway, soft voice, firm stance. A year passed, measured not by holidays or flights home, but by Wednesdays and Saturdays that filled with names on a sign-in sheet and the quiet rustle of girls taking notes. My mother accepted the challenge in the language she understood, preparation. She revised her workshop handouts until they read like a friend explaining a secret instead of a lawyer winning an argument. By spring she was staying late, lingering by the door as girls told her about campus visits and roommates and the first time a dean pronounced their names correctly. I watched her listen. Not perform, listen. When one of our seniors got a predatory work-study offer that was essentially unpaid labor, my mother walked her through drafting a respectful refusal. The girl came back the next week glowing. Mom smiled, small and quiet, and asked for the next document to decode. My father found his footing in cardboard and foam core and, eventually, in actual blueprints. A grant we didn't expect came through, and the foundation asked if he would sketch options for low-cost student housing near the bus lines. He said yes without calling it charity. He called it design. He brought in his old books and set them in a neat row on our shelf. He led the girls through the logic of a corridor, the way light can make a cheap room feel like a promise. He argued gently with the board about materials, modeling how to push without burning bridges. The first time he rolled out a site plan on our table, the room went quiet the way rooms do before something begins. Kevin helped too. I won't turn him into a hero, but I will tell the truth. He showed up more than I expected. He learned the girls' names, got the microphones working before events, printed programs without typos, and texted me when we were low on granola bars. He stopped performing pain and started counting chairs. He messed up, apologized without a monologue, and tried again the next week. When one of our students froze before a mock interview, he coaxed a laugh out of her with a ridiculous question about the best French fries in the city. She breathed, answered, and finished strong. He grinned like he'd landed a plane. For the first time, I saw that his talent for charm could be repurposed into reliability if he allowed it. Somewhere in those months, my anger thinned from a blade to a thread. We began to communicate differently, not because we forgot what came before, but because repetition trained our muscles. My mother texted me case law for a workshop and ended with, "Proud of this." My father sent elevations for the dorms with a note that said, "Cheap is not the same as mean." Kevin sent a photo of neatly stacked folding chairs and wrote, "Left them better than I found them." I didn't fund anyone's emergencies. I acknowledged the hours and let the hours do the teaching I never could. By autumn, the dorm design had a name, a budget, and a waiting list. My mother's clinics were standing room only, and she'd trained 2 younger attorneys to continue them. Kevin could set up a room in 20 minutes flat and had a spreadsheet he actually maintained. We didn't go back to the old rituals. We made new ones. At Christmas, we met in a neutral cafe halfway between my office and their hotel. No tree from my childhood, no rules about stockings, no silent seating charts. Just a table near a window fogged by our breath and mugs that warmed our hands. No one mentioned overshadowing. No one said uncomfortable. We talked about the winter formal we were planning for the girls, borrowed dresses, borrowed ties, a borrowed band, and about the dorm timeline and which contractor treated insulation like an afterthought. My mother admitted she'd started a list of her own firsts this year. My father passed me a folded paper napkin with a tiny plan he'd sketched for the dorm's laundry room. Bright, safe, a place where nobody would hesitate to wash something delicate. Kevin asked if he could be in charge of the playlist for the formal and didn't flinch when I said, with veto power. Walking back into the cold, I realized I felt taller without being bigger. My value had never depended on their approval. I had said that before. But now it wasn't a defense. It was a fact that made room for something else. And the demand that I become less so someone else can feel more, that was never love. That was an imitation of family, rehearsed and tidy until you looked at the cost. They put in time. I keep my boundaries. We meet where the girls are. And when I say no, it echoes differently in a room that's been warmed by a year of yes that mattered. This past year showed me something I never thought possible. People can change if you stop enabling them. My mother, once a master of excuses, learned how to listen instead of defend. My father, who thought blueprints mattered more than people, now spends weekends designing safe spaces for girls who have no one else to believe in them. And Kevin, who once relied on my wallet and their indulgence, finally had to lift something heavier than a beer can. And me? I no longer wait for praise that never comes. And now I want to ask you, have you ever been forced to set strict conditions with your family? Have you ever had to say no even when your whole life you were trained to say yes? Please share your own story in the comments below. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read tonight. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to my channel. Because it helps keep stories like this alive, stories that remind us that dignity, respect, and self-worth are not privileges, they are rights.